Lone Survivor is an indie game that was created by just one man. Yeah, it's another indie game created by an auteur, somebody who had a hand in all parts of the development, from the writing, design, programming, and even the scoring of the game. And that man's name is Jasper Byrne. I believe Jasper is more well known for his contributions to the Hotline Miami soundtrack than anything else, but I don't think he seems to mind. And with music this good, why should he? Lone Survivor wasn't my first taste of Jasper Byrne's video games. I had played his 16-bit remake of Silent Hill 2 that he released as part of a project during an independent game jam called Soundless Mountain 2. And when this came out, it shook up the survival horror community. Silent Hill fans were begging him to continue the project. I was one of them. It was enthralling to see an indie developer absolutely nail the atmosphere of Silent Hill 2 in this format. The surrounding hype that came from Soundless Mountain 2 influenced Jasper's direction for his next big project. Initially, Lone Survivor went by the handle Amnesia, and it was intended to be a more point-and-click based survival horror in the vein of the old LucasArts games like Maniac Mansion. Lone Survivor went through many different iterations. It started off as somewhat of a watercolor point-and-click game, then it turned into a zombie shooting flash game that you might find on Newgrounds. At some point during development, Jasper had an idea for a 3D Doom-style Lone Survivor. Then he released an alpha of the game that demonstrated the lighting engine and how the exploration was going to work. The scope of the project got bigger and bigger as time went on, and Jasper would continue to make revisions to his original idea, leading all the way up to the director's cut, which is the version I'm playing. Let's get into the game and talk about what worked so goddamn well. First and foremost, a little stage setting in real life is recommended by Jasper. He recommends you play in a dark room with no interruptions. If you have headphones, use them. If you don't, turn up your speakers and disable those goddamn trophy notifications if you want to fully immerse yourself in the world he created. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to the work of an auteur. Here you have the creator outright recommending the most authentic way to enjoy their vision. It's like when David Lynch decries watching films on your fucking cell phone. But don't worry if you own this game on the PlayStation Vita, it's equally gripping as its console and PC counterparts. But I know you don't own one of those, so I'll move on.
Get real.
The game begins on a stage with blue curtains, possibly velvet in material. In the next room over, look, checkered tiles, and a mysterious tall man with a box on his head, who's only referred to as the man who wears a box, who recommends we try the damn fine coffee sitting before us. We drank full and descend. We fall further into the dreamscape and encounter our first mutant. Here begins a brief tutorial on how to sneak by the game's primary enemies, these fleshy naked guys known as Thin Men. Like many aspects of the game, the Thin Men bear a striking resemblance to Silent Hill Shattered Memories' Rorschachs. Moving forward, our protagonist runs into a mysterious woman in a blue dress. Thankfully, not naked, waiting for us on our front lawn. After inquiring about who she is, she drops a flashlight for the mysterious man with the shit-eating grin and awakens him from one nightmare into another. So let's talk about our protagonist. He is the titular Lone Survivor, and his name is not important. All we know is he wears a surgical mask, and I goddamn hope it's N95 graded. And he's ducking away in his apartment from the mutants that lurk outside. He lives his life barefooted, so he doesn't draw attention to his location. Who he is or what happened during the pandemic that he survived are intentionally left vague, and small clues are sprinkled throughout the plot which may or may not line up to something concrete. Jasper is the kind of guy who leaves things up to the player's interpretation to fill in the gaps where they lie. I'm gonna put a spoiler break in here, but not one that you might expect. This doesn't deal necessarily with plot elements, it has to do more with gameplay mechanics. Lone Survivor is one of those incredible games that is better enjoyed if you go in fully blind and try and figure out things on your own your first run through. The struggle, the confusion, the mystery, that's all part of the appeal. So if you don't want to have that robbed from you, then jump to the time code. The crux of the game centers around our survivor's mental health. You have to understand, he's been living in this pandemic scenario for a very long time, and it's starting to get to him. There's really two ways to enjoy Lone Survivor. You can either go the aggressive route, killing all the enemies that you see and making choices that not only harm the protagonist, but the people he later encounters. Or you can choose the pacifist route, choosing instead to lure the enemies with rotten meat found in your refrigerator and slowly sneaking by, or loading up on flares, a la Shattered Memories, dropping them down and making your escape. You're also rewarded for doing recreational activities that improve the player's sanity. Like playing the PSP. Most players will likely go the aggressive shoot all the shit route, never finding out about the pacifist option in place. The conceit of the game is about mental health. It's a different take on a pandemic-like scenario. Though the monsters are kind of there in the background, the bulk of Lone Survivor is about coping with the boredom and loneliness of the post-apocalypse. It's quite the depressing thought, but with the current state of the world, I'm starting to relate to this game in ways that I never thought I would before. Lone Survivor is a game that really opens itself up to you after the first time you complete it. When you beat the game, you're presented with a list of all the different factors the game was measuring and clues you into the different choice elements you could have made during your playthrough. I even think it was handled better here than in Silent Hill Shattered Memories, where it splashes a giant warning before the game starts to let you know that you're being graded constantly. Wouldn't it have been more magical if Silent Hill Shattered Memories just let you interact within its world without letting you know that it was catering the entire game experience to you based on your choices from the start?
Try to answer truthfully. It's easier that way. Never cheated on a partner? Really?
There's no pressure or influence to behave if you don't know that you're being silently judged the entire time.
Nice.
Coming hot off of Deadly Premonition, I instantly picked up on the hunger system at play. One of the best ways to earn sanity points is through some good old-fashioned comfort food. There's an entire subquest within Lone Survivor about building the ultimate cheeseburger. It's just tucked away in the background and you won't likely discover it until your second or third playthrough. And the only way to get all the necessary ingredients for the ultimate cheeseburger is through this very intricate bartering system where you trade items you find within the game world with the couple of NPCs that you meet. My favorite NPC being, of course, the director, who's kind of this film noir gumshoe character. He'll give you all sorts of useful items when you trade with him, such as different kitchen utensils that you can use to cook food or brew coffee with. And if you trade with him some comic books, he'll hand over some cat food, which you then can use to adopt a stray cat, who's an entirely different NPC that you can build relationships with. There's a distinct relationship building mechanic going on in the background that's heavily influenced by Japanese games like Persona, and it seems right at home within Lone Survivor. It's no secret that our director is a pupil from the school of survival horror, and he is well studied. Early into the game, there was a scene that gripped me into wanting to continue. It's when the lone survivor finally enters apartment 203 and stumbles upon a party in the middle of this pandemic. If I get mutant virus, I get mutant virus. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna let it stop me from partying. I refer to this as Lone Survivor's Vincent moment. Although it might be one of many nods to Silent Hill, I just love it when a game bends reality to leave you with more questions than answers. It also helped that my toe was tapping the entire time to that sweet, sweet party music. Like the plot, the soundtrack also goes many bizarre places. It includes your trip-hoppy Yamaoka, your atmospheric Yamaoka, and then your more mellow, shoegazy My Bloody Yamaoka tracks. The game truly blurs the line between work of homage and infringement, though many of these elements could be seen as tributes to his influences, like Chuck the Plant here being a blatant nod to the old LucasArts adventure games. There are some uncanny choices made in the soundtrack department that walk right up to that line without ever crossing over it. It would be short-sighted to write off the game as a Silent Hill clone with a different paint job. There's a lot of original contributions that allow it to stand rightfully on its own two bare feet. The appeal of many independent games are the recognizable elements that it contains, found in other games that players might be familiar with, which act as a primer to get the gamers interested in your product in the first place. A lot of indie games are just deconstructions of traditional formulas. That doesn't necessarily mean these games are entirely derivative of their influences. Though I won't spoil the experiences for you, you should come to expect that Lone Survivor isn't the kind of game that blatantly spells out all of its surreal aspects. Much like the work of David Lynch, from which the plot derives a lot of influence, the beauty of the work comes from how it makes you feel in the moment, and it leaves just enough breadcrumbs of plot for you to arrive at your own answer for what had happened. As a lifelong fan of the genre of survival horror, I feel that Lone Survivor doesn't get enough attention. It's one of the greatest love letters to this genre that sadly many have skipped over or gave up on without seeing all that it had to offer. Over 9 years later, I still think Lone Survivor holds up quite well. Although Jasper's output for making video games is sporadic at best, I just want him to know that he's got a lifelong fan in me. I would love to see his creative direction on another horror-related project. He has a better eye for it than most. All in all, thanks for watching, thumbs up the video, subscribe to my channel, and most importantly, Cuck Fanami. I'll see you all next time.